Okay, what we're gonna do next is we're kind of revisiting this segment that you guys seem to like, which is
Tink My Deck.
so Tink My Deck. You guys have sent in like over the last 2 weeks. Actually, you guys have sent in some of your decks, which I really appreciate. And now we're gonna take a look at two of them and help you guys improve those decks. Having these pro players take a look at them. The first, actually, before I do that, I did forget to credit the patron deck that I showed to Elrox, on Hearthstone. I just want to make sure, give him credit for that, and thanks for letting me show your deck. But the Value Town deck or fan deck that we're going to be showing here is going to be a Burst Priest from Vor. Let me actually bring it up. Here it is. Okay, so this Burst Priest from Vor. This is kind of similar to something you were talking about that you were playing, Firebat. This kind of Prophet Valen, kind of Blast Mage. All right, so the goal here, guys, is to take a look at their deck and try to improve it. And any little tweaks that we can make to it to make it a little bit better for them on the ladder. That's what we're going for.
Okay. Well, right off the bat, you're only running one Valence Chosen, and you have so many early game minions that you could hit with the Valence Chosen that it seems ridiculous not to run two, especially with like double zombie chow and stuff like that. Like just being able to go one drop into coin Valence Chosen can usually give you enough tempo to just seal out a game right there. So I would love to see a second Valence Chosen over something, and that's going to be where I think we start off of. Where would you possibly switch out something? Maybe Mass Dispel.
Mass Dispel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
You don't like the silence and the card draw for 4?
I mean, your damage is over the top anyway, so you don't really need to silence taunts or anything, so I guess it's in there for, like, Sylvanas. And that's
I think there needs to be a very, like, if you're looking at it from a ladder perspective of how you choose what cards go in your deck, there has to be a very common scenario where you want to silence 2 or more targets.
Yeah,
and they're just, that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Like, it's a very niche card. Like, there's
the
not
card draw
that
makes
situation.
sense with like the whole combo plan, but there's just like better card draw alternatives for it.
If you want silence, just use the card silence to save mana, I think.
Yeah.
You probably don't need silence. Like,
Yeah, I don't think with this deck you would need too much.
you're not going
silence.
through taunts. Sylvanas isn't a huge deal because you have like Light Bomb, you have board clears.
Yeah.
Eh.
I've played like this style of deck a lot. On my account currently, there's 4 priest decks built that are all this sort of thing going on with it. And I found like it's impossible to fit in the whole Alchemy Soul Priest Circle Flash Heal sort of package because you just don't have enough card draw to get towards your bigger combos, because then you have to value how many cards in your deck are actually combo pieces that you have to hold on to for a specific situation. So you got 2 Circle of Healings, 2 Flash Heals, 2 Holy Smites, and then you got 2 Mind Blasts, and then you got 2 Shadow Word Deaths that are pretty situational. You got the Soul Priests, which are 2 situational cards, and then you got Emperor, which is situational because you got to make sure it hits the right cards, and then you got Prophet, which is situational. That's like over half your deck is now situational cards. So
You're like defining priest right now. Like, yeah.
It runs into like a weird situation where you don't know when you want to play your cards, and if you want to use Alchemy for clearing the board, then you lose your Flash Heals for burst later, and it gets tricky.
What do you think about just like more of a regular priest deck? I think I've seen like Zed a lot play something like this where it's like the regular package. You put in like 1 Mind Blast, 1 Velen, and maybe 2 Holy Smites, and so sometimes you get them with the 14 damage, but rather than trying to get it all in one turn with an Emperor and do like 28 or something, you just like chip away at them with the normal stuff like Velen's, Injured Blade Master. It plays more like Druid where you just do a big combo at the end.
Yeah, just a little bit of range. Yeah.
So, yeah, I like that.
I think that's one direction you can kind of look to go rather than having weaker cards, more situational cards like Acolyte, the Flash Heals, all that kind of stuff. You can take more of an aggressive approach with Injured Blade Masters, maybe like Death Lords, more proactive, and then fit in a small amount of that combo at the end for some fun finishes.
Yeah, I like that approach.
That is probably more solid than going all in on this strategy.
It's kind of hard to stay alive in some cases against tempo decks or mid-range tempo decks with this, because you're going to be using like Circle and Aconite to clear stuff, so that's going to remove some of your range too, right? So yeah, but fun deck though. I've definitely played this type of deck before, and it's definitely a lot of fun, especially for priest.
I would add Justicar though into this.
Yeah, that's another thing I was going to mention. Yeah, Justicar, because the hero power ends up being a 4 damage that you can use to remove or deal straight damage.
And the being defensive as well.
Yeah, so if we just review everything that's been said, we would cut Emperor Thorson.
Yep.
We would cut Mass Dispel, and then we would cut a Mind Blast, and then cut the Flash Heals, and then like add Light of the Narus. Oh, cut the Acolytes too. And then add Light of the Narus, then some solid 3-drop, maybe Dark Cultist, Injured Blade Master sort of thing going on. A second Velen's Chosen, possibly Justicar over the Emperor slot.
Just some kind
solid
of minions. Yeah, just
yeah.
kind of solid minions to at least get you to that end game where you can
Right,
possibly finish.
because the early game in this deck is so strong, like your 1-drops, your Power Word Shield, Velen's, Holy Smite, that winning the early game, like you want it to mean something. You want to have something to go into. With this deck right now, you're winning early game super hard, and then you're passing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, we got another deck here, and before we get into that deck, I just want to remind you guys to post your questions to the link I have there. You can actually tweet also to @ChanManV, and I'll take questions there too. I don't have too many questions today, so I'm trying to get you guys to post some. All right, next up we've got a Malagus Rogue, which we've definitely heard a lot of Malagus Rogues in the past, but this one has a little bit of everything in it. So let's see if we can help this fan out. His name is Vince. I think it's Vinny actually. So thanks Vinny for sending this in. It's got Burgle, it's got Malagus obviously. It's got Alex Straza, it's got Bolf in this deck. I mean, so we definitely got a little bit of everything. Partially, I guess, health to try to stay alive with the anti-Killbot and Bolf. Also Alex Straza at times. But what do you guys think? Trying to at least stay, don't totally change it to just Oil Rogue or something here.
The first thing is Malagos is in your deck and you have 3 damaging spells.
Yeah, okay.
That hit your opponent's face anyway. I mean, you can't really count Backstab and Fan because those you want to use early. You want to use them to clear minions. So I think
that's what Burgle's for.
I guess you can burgle your opponent's cards, but
Burgle Paladin.
when I've played Malagos Rogue in the past, like even with Sinister Strike, the second Flurry, like even with a Shiv, like normally I play with about 6 damaging spells to face. Even that feels like you're running out because you have to realize you have to use those early game too. Like on turn 2, sometimes you have to eviscerate things, and then if that's one of your 3 spells that you use for Malagos, like suddenly Malagos is a dead draw in your deck. So you need, if you want that to be your central strategy of winning the game, like you need more avenues to approach that from.
Yeah, agreed.
I think we need a few more early game minions too. We only have 2 3-drops and 2 4-drops, so like our early game curve is really scarce. I could see like a lot of hands where we don't actually have a drop until turn 5, which is not good because then your opponent's going to mount like a huge board advantage on you. Yeah. So just adding in maybe Earthen Ring Farseers, maybe even Shade of Naxxramas, because that might fit the theme a little bit better since you have the 2 heal bots. Something like that you can invest in on the board and that can grow and help you compete with board a little bit later. And Shredders. Shredders are really good. They probably belong in almost every Hearthstone deck ever. Just so much value out of those guys.
Balanced card.
Yeah.
What about Violet Teacher?
Violet Teacher
better
too.
Yeah, that's
than the Shredder in this deck.
Maybe so. Yeah, it's definitely.
I actually think Shredder's fairly good in this because with the Malagos, you often find yourself like wanting to save prep or save like some of your cheaper spells, so you don't want to like just go all in on Violet Teacher. And Druid's really popular right now, so
yeah, that turn
Swipe.
You gotta get rid of some of those early games too.
So
but...
what would you cut then? I'm not a big fan of both personally. I think it's too big of a.
What's wrong with both?
It's too big of a like mana investment for what it does, I think. So
all I can tell from looking at this list is this guy He has something out for aggro. He's lost to too many aggro decks.
Yeah,
It's
definitely.
gonna end double heal up both all the taunts. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, you're probably gonna beat aggro with this, I guess, but
You will.
some of your control matchups might be lacking because you have weaker stuff like healbots, both stuff that won't really fight for board that well.
To Firebat's point too, if you don't have any early minions, then and it's kind of supporting Chakki's initial thoughts too, is that you're going to be spending all these spells too, like removing them, and you're literally going to have nothing left to do any damage with. So gotta have some kind of support early on. Sjow, any comments on this?
Both is like he feels really bad about. From what the conclusion we come up to is pretty much what's needed.
What do y'all think of Alex Straza?
As well.
What do you think of Alex Straza in this deck?
I think Alex Straza can work. Rogue's usually about getting a lot of chip damage in, though, so it's kind of awkward. But we've seen it work in the past. Like, Taray had like an old Miracle Rogue that had Alex Straza in it, but now I think Rogue's more tempo-focused than it was before, so I think it's gone down significantly.
Yeah.
So I could see putting something else in over the Alex Straza, but you don't want to put in like another sprint because you want to save the preps for Malagos. So it's kind of awkward what you want to do with that slot, what sort of big minion, big drop you want to put there. I could see like Dr. Boom just falling into that spot pretty nicely too.
Yeah. Dr. Boom's another one of those cards. It's hard not to run.
Yeah, it's just so good. Like, you're going to deal some face damage, you're going to clear some minions off the board, you're going to slow them down a little bit, which Alex Straza could be dealt with simply by just Big Game Hunter. And then Dr. Boom, you do deal with the Big Game Hunter, there's still the Boombots there that are going to help slow the game down a little bit so you can stall out to that Malagos combo.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, I think that's going to be the, just the last of the two decks that we're going to look at from, the users. And again, thanks guys for sending in those decks. If you want to have your decks be part of this Tink My Deck segment of Valuetown each and every week, you can send your decks to valuetown at chanmanv.tv. And I'll take a look at them and figure out which ones I think will work the best on the show. But again, we've been getting a bunch of decks, so I've been having to choose between a lot of them. Some of your decks, guys, are just already really good, so it's hard for us to take a look at them because it would be like maybe change one card or something like that. So trying to take a look at the decks I feel like need the most help. But keep sending them for sure, guys. Also, I want to start up a new segment too that's more kind of board scenario analysis and that sort of thing, more like screenshotting, like, hey, what to do next type of thing. So if you guys want to send those in too, go ahead and do that. Again, it's valuetown at chanmanv.tv. So normally we're going to go into Q&A here, but I don't think we have any questions today. I think everybody's just like watching WCS. The time is terrible today. I know, guys, all right, for Valuetown, but the thing is, like, we're kind of glued to this slot. So, hopefully folks will check out the VODs. But if you have any last minute questions, I'll give you, actually, why don't you just ask the questions in the Twitch chat here? I'll see what else we can do. Can you send a link to my Dreadsteed? Actually, have you guys played Dreadsteed at all? Since the nerf to patron, have you guys? I mean, I've seen maybe Savit said he got to a decent rank in Legend with Dreadsteed, like maybe a few days ago.
I haven't played the card at all.
Sjow, what'd you say?
I tried Danksteed a bit.
You seem so happy.
But I tried it when Patreon was around, and then it didn't work at all.
Yeah.
They just abused my Danksteeds, and then I got sad, so I gave up on that.
There's nothing more QQ than like getting it silenced. It's like, oh, like there goes my entire end game right there.
I think it's even funnier when it gets Sylvanas stolen.
Oh,
Suddenly your
gosh.
opponent has the Dreadsteed.
Yeah. Oh man, that's brutal too. That's definitely bad. Okay, well, why don't we call it a show, and we'll get some more questions. Actually, there's a question for Sjow here. What are your thoughts on the new Patreon? Great day. Oh, we talked about the Patreon earlier, guys. Are you gonna get pizza for breakfast, Sjow, tomorrow?
Yeah, every day.
You get some great questions today, baby.
Every day, OPO.
Yeah. Have you had any success with Inspire decks? Yeah. So have any of you guys developed any Inspire centric decks at all?
Nope.
Nope. All right. We
I
talked a
guess
little bit.
Paladin a bit, but it's more of a mid-range, I guess. I
Yeah.
wouldn't call it Inspire.
It's got the most. I think that's about the only deck I've seen that has any kind of potential. I mean, the whole Confessor thing's always fun, and some of the shamans try to get that in right with a Thunder Bluff, but for the most part, that kind of flooding Paladin I think has been the closest thing. Is Dr. Boone still overpowered with the existence of aggro decks and game-changing cards like Challenger?
How many decks is Dr. Boom in right now? It's sometimes in Hunter, sometimes in Druid, definitely in like mid-range version. I've seen the aggro Druid cut it a bit, but most of the time in Druid, and then sometimes in Control Warrior. Most of the time, probably.
It's
I
in
guess
Paladin.
It's in Paladin. It's in like
The better question is
60% of the decks.
what is it not in? That's the better question, right?
well,
It's
it's
in
not
a
in-
lot of decks, but I wouldn't say it's overpowered.
Yeah, it's not overpowered.
It's
If it
just
was
a
in, like,
powerful card.
Shredder's in way more decks than Dr.
Oh
Boom,
yeah,
for
no,
example.
I would much rather see Shredder get nerfed than Doctor Boom get nerfed, like by far. And I think most competitive players would.
I just like to see more. I mean, just other 4-drops played. You know, what I mean, that's my main thing about Shredder too. It's just that there's all these cool 4-drops like Holy Champion and that they've introduced, and we
It
can't play
warps
them.
the entire early game around itself. Like basically everything's based around like how do you go into your Shredder, how do you deal with their Shredder. Like it's ridiculous. You can't play 4 health like minions on 5 anymore.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy.
Okay. Psychotic Moose asks, has anyone tried building a Dragon Druid? And I'll extend that to what's the most surprising class that you've built a dragon deck for that's not the Dragon Priest or a Dragon Mage or anything like that?
Hunter.
Hunter. Okay. Sjow?
Yeah, Hunter.
Really?
For sure.
Hunter? Wow, I've never tried Hunter. I mean, I built the dragon package on almost everything, but I don't think I've tried Hunter.
It was surprisingly okay because it still does Hunter things.
Yeah.
What, damage
Still
to the
hero
face?
power.
Damage to the face.
Turns out you can play just big guys and keep hitting them, and it works out.
I found that out in Challengestone too.
Yeah.
Turns out Hunter hero power pretty good.
Okay, let's see. Hypothetically, how would raising the starting health total change the meta, not factoring in implementation?
Everything would be like cards like Lepronome immediately go down in use. Basically, just cards that are weak but like push your game plan ahead go down in value, whereas cards that are just like overall strong throughout the game, like every card needs to hold their own suddenly. You can never go 1 for 0 ever again. Like you can't trade health for resources anymore. I think the health total's in a pretty good spot. I don't think they're going to change it anytime soon. Like I think from Blizzard's perspective, they'd rather change cards than actual like game philosophy.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there will be a moment where
There would
needs to
probably be like
consistent.
a Tavern Brawl with it, like eventually.
I mean, there's going to be power creep in the very, very near future. I mean, like extreme power creep, I believe, unless they start nerfing a ton of old cards.
But I don't know. I don't think increasing every number like really does anything. Like in like games like Diablo or World of Warcraft, like numbers have gone up and up and up, and like in World of Warcraft, it became a problem where like they eventually had to reduce the numbers across the board. So increasing the numbers leads down a pretty bad path.
Yeah, well, yes, but at the same time, like if you increase this specific number, which is health, right?
Sure.
It almost does nerf every single card in a weird way, or at least a large.
Well,
amount
it
without...
buffs some.
Yeah, it does buff some, but it's like an easier way, I guess. I don't want to say lazy way, but it's an easier way to buff or nerf a lot of like aggro cards and that sort of thing. The question is whether aggro would just be non-existent.
It would be more board focused. Things like Zoo, which are aggro decks, not because of the amount of damage they do, but because of how they can take control of the board and get chip damage every turn thereafter, would be a lot more powerful.
And already aggro decks are very board focused in Hearthstone. People like to act like they're getting zerged down on turn 4, but
Smart.
games are going like 10 turns, on average with aggro decks.
Yeah.
Savannah Highmane is basically in every hunter deck now. I mean, Face Hunter's kind of coming back, but Face Hunter hasn't been a prominent deck this year. It has not really won tournaments. I mean,
6-1 one, right?
right,
Yeah.
but like
Yeah.
the big tournaments, like we're seeing Druid, Warlock, Warrior, like
A lot of druid.
mid-range Hunter,
Yeah.
Tempo Mage. Like it's
Well,
the
there's
metagames. If you go to like Reddit and you just like you don't watch tournaments, you just read about them, you would think like every match is just like Zoo, Face Hunter, like everyone just getting torn up in the first 5 turns. It's like it really isn't.
Well, I mean, it's Face Hunter. You know, it's been around for so long, and people just know how to handle it, right? It's very
Right.
easy to tweak to handle, and the only improvement Face Hunter really got, I believe, was Argent Horse Rider, right? I mean,
Well, I
there's
mean, Patron got nerfed. That was a big improvement to Face Hunter.
indirect improvement,
Yeah.
yes, yeah. But I mean, even if it wasn't Patron, right? I mean, it's like sometimes it's as easy as just adding like Death Lord to your deck, and all of a sudden, like you're doing great against Face Hunter. So that's the one thing about Face Hunter. As much cancer as people always say it is, it's like the one thing that's at least easy to deal with. Where a Secret Paladin is not as easy to deal, like to actually, build a deck that directly counters it and isn't just complete crap against everything else. So yeah, Face Hunter is definitely not too much of a problem. Let's see, next one. What? No, we've already answered that before. Just Beast Druid, another Beast Druid question. So Handlock, is Handlock viable on the ladder right now, or maybe what rank range do you think playing Handlock is viable?
Pretty sure you can take Handlock to Legend.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's a really
you can
solid
probably-
deck.
could
You can
probably
probably
take it
get
to number 1
number one.
Legends. Like
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, if you grind it out enough, sure.
Number 1
mean-
legend? Wow, okay.
Yeah, I think like viable as a word is really interesting because I think ultimately like in Hearthstone on ladder it does really just come down to how much you play and how well you play, and unless like deck wise, if you pick any like tier 1 deck, you can do perfectly well with it.
Yeah.
Really, the only non-viable decks are like just really really bad stuff. Like where you're just like, I really want to play this new TGT card. Like you're trying to like reinvent the wheel, not playing shredders. Like if you play a standard list from like any tournament, you can get legends if you play well enough.
And long enough.
Yep.
Not long enough, yeah. All right, let's take a couple more. Let's see. So there's a question for me. What kind of tournaments are the future of Hearthstone, or just interesting in general for you? For me, and this can just go to all of us, I guess. I want to see something that's honestly closer to Challengestone, or just something where they, the players can change their decks in between rounds, so that what we see with the traps, like we just saw Bear Trap on on BlizzCon, where that's just not going to be revealed, and everybody now knows that he doesn't run whether it's Snake or Freezing or whatever it is, right? And just it's a lot easier to mulligan, and it defeats the purpose of the cards, and that happens a lot, like in all these events where you come in with this cool type of wrinkle to your deck, and then it's just gone. Firebat, I know actually all three of you guys I think have done it in some regard, and it's just like one round you get its value, and then all of a sudden a lot of times it can be detrimental to you because you played around something that was specific to your group or something like that. So yeah, I'd like to see events where you get a chance to change it. Even like it, I don't know if I'd like to see a single deck type of thing where you can completely change your decks in between games. But I do like the class. I still like the class component to it. But you should be able to play whatever type of Warlock you want to play if you have to play Warlock.
You would like HBL. They have that format. Basically,
Yeah, HBL is pretty
you can
close to
play
it.
whatever you want.
Yeah.
You can play one deck first round, and they can play completely different. Like you can change your deck whenever.
Is there a class delineation though, or do you?
No.
No,
there's
you can
Oh, okay.
you can play
You
whatever
just
you
do
want.
whatever you want.
It's
and then
literally
See, I don't
every
love
game,
your deck
anything
counters
you
your
want.
opponent.
I don't quite love that because then it's a little bit of just like rock paper scissors or just dice rolling in some ways. That's the way
Well,
you come.
I think Hearthstone's weird in that way because we have so many like hard counter cards like Kazan, Flare, Harrison, Ooze, that it's hard to have unlimited sideboard with locked class. Like, oh, my opponent's playing warrior. I wonder if he's playing weapons. Like, I'll just sideboard in these oozes and this Harrison. And I've played tournaments like that. They were a lot more prominent in like the very early days of Hearthstone, where you'd have like one class tournaments you can sideboard between games. It created some really weird stuff going on. I wasn't a huge fan of it, but I think the one thing I'd like to see more of is more like right now we're in Conquest, which is basically like the peak low of strategy in Hearthstone.
Okay.
It's just like
Yeah, I know what you mean.
one of the
I know what you mean.
optimal strategies is literally to like random what deck selection you're using. Whereas in the past, like just any sort of ban format or even like sideboarding formats have strategy. It's just something to do outside of the game to increase your advantage, like by spending more time, like
Yeah.
being smarter about the game. I really enjoyed like just like pick and ban formats where my favorite was when you pick and ban from the same pool of classes. So like you don't bring your classes to the tournament. There's just a pool of 9. You both ban one and then you both pick 3. That we did that at like Fight Night way back
yeah,
when.
That's a good. That's pretty good too. Yeah.
I think the main issue like Blizzard and tournament organizers have with that is it just takes more time and it's harder to
Wait, could you
enact.
repeat? Could you wait? Were they unique between?
Yeah,
the
it's
teams?
completely unique.
Okay,
so you
I
see
see.
6 different classes in each
Yeah.
match.
Okay.
One class goes unplayed and unbanned, and then
that's
2
cool.
classes get banned.
I like that. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yep, it's kind of similar to like something you'd see in a MOBA like League or Dota, where
Yeah,
you're
they pick a
picking from the
character.
same pool. You never see mirror matches.
Mm-hmm.
You get a lot of diversity just innately, and there's a lot more strategy before the game even starts.
Right.
I definitely want to see any sort of new formats besides Conquest, and I don't want to get locked into one format like they did with Conquest, where after
Yeah.
BlizzCon they immediately said, all right, Conquest is the next big thing, everybody run tournaments only in Conquest. Because it doesn't matter what the tournament format is, eventually it'll get figured out, and eventually it'll be kind of boring if for the competitive players that figure it all out, if it's just the same thing every time. So if it's new, like every single tournament's a different format, I guess it's harder for like the viewer to catch up with it and follow it.
Yeah,
But as the player, it's like so much more fun because it's just a different experience every single tournament. And I think like tournament formats in Hearthstone can allow that to happen for the game to be just so different depending on what angle you take on it. And we don't have to be locked into the same thing all the time. And as a competitive player now, all of the tournaments have been Conquest for like forever.
A year,
And it's
like a full year.
yeah, it's
now.
like, oh my god, it's miserable to play. Whereas there's like, there's so many different things you can do with this game. Just do a different format.
Yeah,
Anything.
It's felt so stale, and it's
Yeah.
a shame because it shouldn't really feel that way. Sjow,
Yeah.
any desires for what kind of event you'd love to see or play in?
As long as it's not Conquest. I mean, like
That's how bad it is.
When
Like,
you
as long as it's
know,
not
when you
conflict.
when you see that the best player in Conquest have 60% win ratio, then you know it's like a bad format because it's really hard to get an edge from that.
Yeah.
So you need to have, like Chakki said, something that gives you more edge just by strategy instead of gameplay only.
Yeah, I kind of mentioned it last episode with Frodan and it was Frodan, Eloise, and Savitz. But to your point, Firebat, like to keep it kind of changing up the entire season, I'd actually like to see kind of a majors type of setup to Hearthstone, where each of the majors has a completely different format. So, kind of like puts everybody in a different environment, and you win in that environment. Like you're the champion of that environment type of feeling to it. I think that'd be cool. I think it would favor some players. It would show who's the most versatile in terms of like strategizing and that sort of thing. And it would just keep people, it just keep things fresh, like in terms of just the whole events scene.
Yeah.
And so it'd be great to see that. Of course, in the end, you have to pick one, right? So I guess based on the results of those, whichever one seemed to resonate the best, that's what you do at the, in the end at BlizzCon. But definitely not something the entire year. ATLC was felt good because of that too, right? They had a different just event in itself, and just the way picking classes and that sort of thing, and that felt really good. I think when people were really refreshed by ATLC, and that's just a small example of what it should be throughout the entire year. Okay, I think that's a good question to probably end things on. But great show, guys. Hopefully this VOD will be watched or viewed because the timing of the show obviously overlaps with BlizzCon. Most people are watching that right now, but that doesn't keep it from being the episode of being such a great show. And I'm really happy you guys were able to do the show this week. Show, this is like your first appearance, right, on Valuetown, I believe. Is that?
Yeah, it's the first.
Yeah. Actually, I never had you on any of my StarCraft shows either, right? I can't remember.
No. I've never been like a
Pro Corner or whatever back in the day,
yeah.
right?
I've never been this kind of guy that goes to talk but I like you, so
yeah. But anyways, man, thanks for being on the show and
no
I
problem.
appreciate it. But you got any shout outs you want to do?
Thanks to my team and thanks for having me.
Yeah, anytime, man. Anytime you want to be on. Chakki, how about you?
Pretty much the same. Thanks to my team, Dignitas. Shout outs to Kranich playing at BlizzCon. Already won his first match. Best of luck to him. And shout outs to you for having me, ChanManV.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, same sort of thing. Shout outs to the team, Archon, and then shout outs to Purple. He's probably going to win BlizzCon. I'd probably bet money on it. And then thanks for having me again, ChanManV.
Yeah, I'll wrap things up again. Thanks to the three guys for having me on, and I look forward to seeing you guys at hopefully at BlizzCon. At least I'll see Firebat at BlizzCon, and then hopefully a lot of you viewers too. I'd like to set up some kind of Valuetown meetup, but probably not the best time to do that. But for those of you that are interested in a meetup, so that I know that it's like worth actually arranging. And when I say meetup, I mean let's go like meet up at, I don't know, maybe a restaurant or a bar, and then maybe we can have some food and stuff, that sort of thing too, and just hang out and talk some Hearthstone, all that good stuff. Shoot me an email at valuetown@chanmanv.tv and let me know if that sounds like something that you guys would be interested in. Again, guys, we have a Patreon for Valuetown, patreon.com/Valuetown. Lots of thanks to all the current patrons for supporting the show. There are a lot of upcoming things that are going to be patron exclusive. Call-ins, we're going to be doing call-ins right after BlizzCon. I have that set up now. Really set up for patrons to do it. If for some reason we don't have enough patrons to do it, then I may open it up to just more of the either subs or actually not just subs, but just the general viewers to be able to call in and ask your questions that way. But yeah, definitely take a look at that, guys. I appreciate it if you enjoy the show and want to support it. But the VODs are going to be available very soon on youtube.com/ChanManV. Be sure to look out for that. And audio is always going to be on iTunes, and you can get like a direct feed from FeedBurner, which I always link on twitter.com/ChanManV. Big thanks to Tempo Storm for sponsoring the show. Obviously, they're sponsors too, Twitch, G2A, and Funk for supporting them. But for Sjow, Chakki, Firebat, and myself, ChanManV, that's going to be it for Valuetown this week. We will see you next week. Later.